Good evening and welcome to our show this evening. We're going to be talking about coccidiosis. If you've never had it, you're fortunate. If you have had it, you kind of know where we're going with tonight's show. It's a very important topic. But I want to tell you right up front, we do have some warning. We have some reasonably graphic images, so just be warned. All right. I want to start out with a question. Have you ever seen chicks that look like this? Or maybe you've noticed droppings in your layer coop that look like maybe bloody diarrhea, like this. Well, if you have, those are both classic signs of coccidiosis. And when you see it, it's time to take action because it can get way out of hand. It can stop the growth of young birds. It can also kill them. And if you've got egg layers, your production into the tank. So we are going to talk about not only these signs, but what you can do to understand coccidiosis so you can beat it. Hey, you may have noticed Jeff is not with us tonight. He's on a business trip out and about and enjoying himself out. He's headed out to the Midwest and out west. And Jeff, I hope you're having a wonderful time. Just sorry we're not there to be with you and enjoy it with you. Karen is with me tonight, so thank you, Karen. We're going to have fun tonight. We're going to have a good show. But first, why do we need to understand coccidiosis? Well, it's like any other problem we face as poultry keepers. If you understand that problem, understand what causes it, how it works, how it functions, then you have a better chance of beating it to the punch.
All right. That's the plan. I want to beat it. What is it, though? I mean, what is it?
Well, some folks think it's a bacteria or a virus. It's not. It is not a parasite like worms or anything like that. It is a microscopic parasitic protozoan. And you can see these little egg-shaped gizmos here. Those are actually called oocysts. And the chickens will eat those. They're microscopic. You know how chickens are always pecking into everything. And so they ingest those things and they will actually multiply in the chicken's intestinal tract and embed in the intestinal tract. There's different types of coccidiosis. We've got a graphic here. The first one, and I'm not even going to begin to pronounce these names because I'm not good at Latin names. Going from left to right, and the colored images there. That first one, Acer Galini.
Just go with the first one.
I'm going with the first one. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Karen. I appreciate that. You can see that it attaches itself into the upper part of the digestive tract, in the upper part of the intestines. Remember, in the intestines, there's very small pockets, microscopic pockets, and they embed in these pockets. And it doesn't take but just a few days from the time they ingest the oocyst to the oocyst sporulate, and the sporulate, they start the process all over, and pretty soon, when the chickens poop, you got oocyst in that chicken poop. And that's how it spreads. This first one is, the signs are anemia, light enteritis, and loss of appetite. This is where we start to see those chicks who just are doing real good, and then all of a sudden they shut down and they're not growing and they're not developing the way they should. If we move over to the second one, from going from left to right, the maxima, you can see it embeds itself a little bit further down into the digestive tract, and that's when you start seeing signs like diarrhea, loose droppings that may have blood in them. have a low mortality rate, and that's a good sign. But now, when we get over in these last three, let's go in from left to right. We're going to number three, and that's in a really low portion of the intestinal tract. Um, Brunetti will cause enteritis and occasional bloody diarrhea. Going over to number four, Necatrix, it affects a larger portion, much more like the second one, but it's bloody enteritis, and they really stop eating feed. That's how, if you see your birds and you're getting these bloody droppings and they're not eating their feed, you know what you're dealing with. And the last one, Tonella, you get bloody droppings, reduction in feed intake. Now, with these last three, you can see that we get dysentery, high morbidity, and high mortality. That's when you start seeing heavy losses in your birds. Now, the cases that I've had, I have seen more in my younger birds than I did in my older birds. The younger birds seem to be impacted a little more quickly. Excuse me. And it can really devastate them.
And I don't think those aren't all the types of coccidiosis that affect the birds.
No.
That's just some of the main
there's
ones.
others, and other animals, including us, can get coccidiosis. But coccidiosis is by and large pretty host specific. So the coccidiosis in birds shouldn't be a problem for dogs. Coccidiosis in dogs is not going to be a problem for humans. So don't worry about that. I mean, they're going to transfer it from bird to bird to bird to bird, but they're not going to transfer it from them to you. Okay.
And when we were looking at that list, the big thing I noticed was what variety of they have makes a big difference on how it affects your birds, like
Yes.
and how
Yes.
strongly it affects your birds. You see people online, and some people are like, they got coxy, they'll be fine. Other people are like, they got coxy, and then they're all dead. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so it's
That's
you
because
can,
you got the different types.
yeah.
And a lot of folks don't realize that. They think coccidiosis is coccidiosis. It's all lumped into one, but it's actually spread out. It can be multiple types. But fortunately, the treatment for it is, and we'll get to that in a minute, the treatment is pretty much the same all the way across the board.
All right. Now that you tell me it's a prozoa, this question isn't right anymore. But how do they catch it? How do they catch this disease?
Well, they got these tiny little nets. No,
That's right.
I'm kidding. Well, as birds that have coccidiosis are pooping out these oocysts and spreading them around all through the coop, all through the cage, or maybe all through your range if you range your birds. And you can look at this graphic here, and it shows you the life cycle of the infected birds. Shed these oocysts. My medicine's got me coughing here.
The interesting thing in this graphic is that it sheds non-infective eggs. Do you know what I mean? Like, the eggs have to develop in order to, the environment has to be conducive to them actually sporulating in order for it to become effective.
Right, but it doesn't take them but about 48 hours to do that. And conditions that are conducive to that are warm weather, especially warm, wet weather. That can cause that stuff to explode. And that's one reason we have such a problem with it down here in the South. In Florida, it's. I know some folks are battling it constantly. They haven't figured out how to break the cycle. But anyway, moving along here. Remember, these oocysts can remain active in the soil for up to a year. So it's not something that you can get over really quickly. And this is how healthy birds can contact it and keep the cycle going, just repeating, 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 repeating. Another thing to remember is that birds that have it and recover are still shedding oocyst. Now, they look great, but throughout their life, they're going to be shedding these oocysts. That's one reason why the old timers believed if a bird got sick, they were yanked out of the farm. And that's how they bred for resistance to a lot of these things. Um,
That that's where part of the biosecurity thing comes from too, right? Because it's like
yes,
here's my coxie, here's your coxie, and how well are they going to get along? You know what I mean? Like you're just
right,
giving them
exactly.
one more. Yeah, and I
Um,
know coxie is not the right word for everybody who wants to, but, but
but and like I said earlier, just remember that coccidiosis can affect younger birds sooner, at about 5 weeks or so, uh, and it's going to be much more dramatic uh, than older birds.
okay.
And you asked earlier, how is coccidiosis spread? Again, the droppings of infected birds is the main way, but remember that we're talking about microscopic oocyst. So anything that walks through and tracks it around, anything like rodents, dogs, and cats can spread it. Flies can spread it. Other insects like darkling beetles can spread it. Um, Horses
Hu-
and cattle, by
Humans.
tracking it around, can spread it. Even we can spread it, on our clothing, on our shoes. If we don't wash our hands after we've handled contaminated feeders and waters, we can spread it.
All right, let's talk about. Now we know there's this terrible thing out there, but is there anything we can use that will take care of it for us?
Not really. I hate to say that. None of our commonly used disinfectants have any effect on the oocyst. Um, but don't panic, because there is one over the counter product that you can use. And believe it or not, that's simple household cleaning ammonia. A 10% solution of ammonia will kill it. Uh, there is a product on the market called Rescue that uh, I can't remember, the University in California did a study on this.
Davis.
I'm not sure, it may be UC Davis. They have a pretty good poultry program. Um, and they indicated this should be effective against oocysts. They didn't say it would or was, but it should be. Um, it is expensive. It's and I didn't know whether you might be aware of it or not, Karen, being in the kennel
Yeah,
business. Because
a lot of kennels use it, and it's hard to get a hold of, and I think it's almost impossible in Canada. So yeah,
hmm,
um,
that's not
but
encouraging for our
yeah,
Canadian friends. Sorry.
I
Um,
feel like it's hard to get a hold of a lot of things in Canada. So
yes.
not that. Um,
Um,
but what else? There's some other sort of cleaning that's
well, steam cleaning is effective against it, as is boiling water. So things like feeders and waterers, you want to clean them thoroughly in hot soapy water, and then I would also dip them in that 10% ammonia solution.
just normal ammonia. Just go to the grocery
Just
store
household
and
cleaning ammonia.
okay, yeah. All right. How about if I don't want to get it in the first place? Can we can we do anything to make it so that we just don't get it?
Sadly, probably not,
Okay.
uh, but probably the best way to do it is if you start your chicks out on either medicated feed that has a coccidiostat in it at a very low level to help keep them from getting it. It uses a drug called amprolium, which you can also buy at Tractor Supplies or these big box farm stores. You can order it over the internet, for that matter. It also goes by the name of Corid, Corrid. Uh, these are a good preventative if used properly. And these are the drugs that are also used to treat it once you get it. Now they have directions for dosage and use right on the package. Make sure you follow those. You don't want to use too much. You don't want to use too little. Um, if you, I know that there are some folks that prefer not to use the medication in their feed, and I totally understand and agree with that. But you, and we're going to play a video here in a few minutes from Jeff, and he will share a way that you can actually protect your birds against coccidiosis without medication.
When you're ordering chicks from hatcheries, you can often get them vaccinated.
Right.
Is that something we can do at home with ours that we hatch?
Oh, well, I guess you could. You know, this little bottle that we're looking at right here, the coccidiosis vaccine, I priced it out and it's $109. And that treats 10,000 birds, but it's a one-time use only. So if you've got 10 chicks, it's going to cost you $110 for a one-shot treatment. It's mixed up and actually misted over their feed to get them to eat it, and that's the way they vaccinate them. There are other brands on the market, but I couldn't find prices on all of them. But they all are applied, it seems, onto the feed so the chicks eat it starting at day one. Hey, if you're enjoying this show or you're liking what you're seeing, just give the old like button a peck down there at the bottom. That will help other folks find it and learn from it as well. So we'd appreciate it if you do that. Thanks. You know, even though Jeff is out and about and couldn't be here in person, we do have 2 or 3 minutes worth of video of Jeff. I interviewed him for another show, and he got into his coccidiosis prevention routine, and I thought it was worth sharing here. So, Karen, if you'll roll that bean footage.
It's when, necrotic enteritis or coccidiosis wins the battle. So preventing those, nutritionally speaking, making sure that you're feeding a good probiotic, okay, periodically, not every day, okay, just once or twice a week, find a probiotic. I don't care if you go get plain yogurt at the grocery store, okay, just put a couple dollops on top of their feed, make it available to them, reseed the gut continually with beneficial bacteria. This gives us beneficial exclusion is the term we use. So there's only so many sites in the digestive tract for bacteria to connect to the intestinal wall or the gut wall. And the more of those we fill up with beneficial bacteria, the less chance of coccidiosis or necrotic enteritis to be able to attach to that intestinal wall and cause severe illness. Because both of those are going to feed on the intestinal wall, right? They're going to chew away at the villi, on that gut wall, kind of like an ulcer. It's going to erode away. So anyway, let's back up. Probiotics going to be your number one, right? So as a preventative, feeding probiotics is, you're going to be really happy with doing that. And I can treat 100 birds with 1 pint of plain yogurt. I mean, that's how far that stretches.
Wow.
So you're not looking at a huge investment by any means, right? You can go get a quart of plain Greek yogurt, any yogurt, doesn't matter, plain yogurt. And a quart's gonna treat up to 200 birds. And, for $2.98 or whatever the cost of that yogurt is, you did a great thing. Even if you only did it once a week, that's going to be beneficial. The simple sugars in the yogurt that come naturally from the milk are also going to feed the beneficial bacteria already residing in the gut, okay? Not feeding the necrotic enteritis, not feeding the coccidiosis oocyst, but feeding the positive, lactobacillus type bacterias, and just feeding the gut in general. So people get all excited, if they have a little bit of coccidiosis. A little bit of coccidiosis is completely normal in a chicken's digestive tract. People don't understand that if you sent me a manure sample and I did a fecal float on it and I saw 0 oocyst, that bird's probably on the verge of dying, okay? Because it does not have a healthy gut. So 0 is not the right answer.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. Thank you, Jeff, for sharing your insights with us on that. I want to do a review here quickly, but before we do, I want to take just a minute to thank the Fur Trail Company for their generous support of what we do. We couldn't do it without them. Fur Trail makes products for both livestock and gardens that are better naturally. Okay, let's take a step here and review what we learned tonight. First off, remember coccidiosis, it is a parasitic protozoan. It is not a virus. It's not a bacteria. It's not affected by antibiotics or wormers. So it requires the special treatment. The only over-the-counter disinfectant that will kill it is ammonia. Fortunately, that's readily available wherever you buy your groceries, or you can run down to Lowe's and get it by the gallon. Just regular household cleaning ammonia, 10% solution. Coccidiosis, oocyst, are the means of infection and reinfection. These little small, circular, somewhat egg-shaped oocysts. Now you can see that they have started to multiply in these cells, and there's multiple. That's called sporulation. And once the birds ingest those little things pop open and release the contents that begin to attach themselves to the walls of the intestines. And it's not too long before the chicks are all, or I shouldn't say chicks, but your birds are passing these oocysts in their droppings. And they're doing that before you see much in the way of symptoms in your birds. So remember, it can be transferred through the droppings. Chickens are notorious for picking through droppings, or passed along by livestock walking around in an infected area, rodents, other birds, insects, poultry equipment like feeders and waters, or even by us on our clothing, our boots or our hands. So make sure you wash your hands. Mom was right to tell you to wash your hands all the time. Also, birds that recover from coccidiosis are still going to be carriers.
That's what she's doing right there. She's spreading it all over.
Even though this hen looks perfectly healthy, she may be passing on those oocysts every time. You know, chickens poop a lot, in case we haven't figured that out. I saw a study one time how I actually figured out how many times a day. Blew my eye. I don't know why anybody would take the time to study that, but okay, whatever. Coccidiosis oocysts can remain active for up to a year in the soil of bedding. So if you have coccidiosis in your enclosed coop, you want to treat it, and you want to make sure that you clean out that bedding, remove it. I wouldn't probably not compost it unless you have a really hot compost pile. I would probably opt for the burning option. If you have coccidiosis,
did you want to see that clean coop video?
if you have coccidiosis, here's some of the things you can do to prevent it and going forward. So, Karen, if you'll roll that video as I proceed with this. Like I said, you want to remove all the coop or brooder bedding, sanitize the area by steam cleaning, or
I'm playing it again.
Treat it with ammonia, especially in areas where manure accumulates, like dropping boards under roofs or in the nest where birds spend time. That's really, really important. If you're wondering what a 10% solution is, that's roughly 13 ounces of ammonia per gallon of water. We'll get you there. And be sure to clean your feeders and your waters. Like I said, you know, you want to clean them with hot soapy water and soak them in that ammonia solution to make sure it's taking care of that coccidiosis. Take preventative measures with your young birds, either offer the medicated feed or use Jeff's method if you want to, if you prefer a more natural solution. I have used it and it has done well for me. And promptly remove damp bedding, accumulated manure, and sanitize feeders and waters with the ammonia solutions on a regular basis. So, Karen, do we have any questions or any comments?
We do. I want to talk a little bit about eating off the ground because that's a prime way that they ingest even more
Yes.
oocysts than. So that's one of Jeff's pet peeves. So if we didn't say it out loud, then
Don't feed birds on the ground.
yeah. Well, and this person is using a feeder, but they're still feeding birds off the ground. Yeah. So, but yes, we have questions. All right, you ready? Do you know everything? All right. All right. So I'm gonna get the things wrong. So Bobby says that emulsified oil of oregano is a sort of more natural treatment for
You know, it very well could be. I know oregano takes care of a lot of things. I haven't seen any studies on it. I haven't seen any papers written about it. But Bobby, I'll trust your judgment, but I just haven't personally seen it.
All right. And then I'm trying to get the names. All right. Valerie wants to know about oxine and its cleaning
Oxine will not touch it.
ability. What about activated oxine?
Nope.
Okay. All right.
Those oocysts are tough.
Okay. Well, and that's sort of why they're designed like that. In you know,
Yes.
I mean, with the cell wall, with the.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So Marie, coccidiosis has always been a given for me every year. My vet would just prescribe me a bottle of Baycox. I'm nervous if that's got Baytril in it. Anyway, each year. This year, I had it in only one pen, even though they had a very wet spring. I attributed it to adding zeolite to their feed. And they're having trouble getting medicated feed anymore. So
Maria, I'm not familiar with zeolite, but as an option of being unable to get medicated feed, you could probably get by with using some of that amprolium or chorid, if you will, at a much lower dose. You just want a small amount to help them develop immunity, so to speak. And both those drugs are administered into water, so it's not something that's very hard to give them.
Can I take a minute to talk about prejudices?
Yes.
All right. So I believe that this medicated feed issue and the Merrick's vaccine issue are sort of along those same lines. Like people who would never give medicated feed and people who would never give a Merrick's vaccine are the people who have the easy versions of these diseases. Do you know what I mean? Like like we talked about before. That so I think just once you've had the devastating loss of the severe Merrick's and the severe coccidiosis, like it might be worth it to swallow your pride and feed a medicated feed or use actual medications to help you, you know, be able to keep going with your birds. So try not to judge people. That's all. All right.
Good point.
I'm not saying who it is, but we can Wheezy. How long will the vaccine last in the chickens? Lifetime, a yearly booster?
I'm assuming it's a lifetime thing. I haven't seen any information on that they need to have a booster on a regular basis. I also know that some hatcheries are offered vaccinated chicks, but again, I don't know. You can kind of try to Google it and see what you can find out.
All right. Craig wants to know if the coccidiosis oocysts are inside of the chickens when they're born? Are they hatched with it like pups or with roundworms, or is it all picked up after hatch?
It is not transferred from the hen to the chick via the egg. They actually have to pick it up after the hatch.
Okay.
So
I'll tell you, I'm going to tell another story just to annoy Rip.
I love story.
So this year I used the hatching time brooders where I've
Mhm.
used the GQF. So it's the same idea, right? You've got a
Mhm.
wire bottom or plastic bottom. And then, so they go from a plastic bottom brooder where they don't have a lot of access to their poop to
Mhm.
a floor brooder at
Mhm.
some point. And when I posted those up on Facebook, Dr. Peter Brown messaged me and he said, "You make sure to watch for coccidiosis the minute they hit the floor, the minute they hit bedding, because they haven't had as much exposure as chicks as they normally would."
Mhm.
So as part of that, being overwhelmed with it versus just that gradual ramping up of it.
Right.
So I was under the impression that they were born with it inside of them, because where else are they going to be exposed to it but from their own poop in the brooder?
Right.
You
Well,
know,
you've got these
flies, insects.
sure, but you've got these wire grids
Yeah,
and these brooders.
yeah,
The poop doesn't fall cleanly through the hole.
right.
And if you've got a bunch of chicks that come down with it, and if you don't take that flooring out and steam clean it or soak it in an ammonia solution, it's
Yeah.
right there. I mean, those oocysts will remain active for up to a year. So that's how they can get reinfected on those brooders.
All
I learned
right.
that one the hard way.
All right. Wheezy's got a challenge for you here.
Who?
Wheezy, there's a
That sounds like
product that begins with a T. That's your first hint. It is used for equines for EPM. A vet told me to use it for cocci. It's very thick and hard to keep mixed up in the water, but you can give it orally to a sick bird and it stops it quick without the risk of thiamine issues. All right. So if you guys want to look for maybe she's got an answer for what it
Weezy,
actually.
I just started saying I'm drawing a blank on that product, but I know you know a whole lot more about horses than I do. But I'm going to take your word on that.
All right. So we're back to the what else do we think? You said you were confident on the oxine wouldn't work. How about the Viricon?
Vircon, I'm just going to repeat what I've seen in the studies, and folks, I'm going to post probably I don't know 4 or 5 studies from different college universities and USDA. I'll upload those PDF files to the file section on Poultry Keepers 360, and it has a lot of good information about coccidiosis. But everything that I've seen that we don't have, other than ammonia, we don't have a disinfectant that is effective against coccidiosis at this time.
All right. Steph has an excellent question. We saw the symptoms in baby chicks. What are the symptoms in an older bird?
Pretty similar. The birds are going to be lethargic. They're going to be droopy, kind of hunkered over sometimes if they have a severe case. You may even see birds, depending on the strain of coccidiosis you're dealing with, that have red staining around the vent feathers below the tail, and that's causing the bloody diarrhea. But they're not going to be as active. It will be pretty obvious those birds are not feeling good and something's going on.
Right. Valerie wants to second that Baycrox is great if your birds are resistant to corid. But it sounded like a vet prescription, so
I think that must be and I know we have drugs available in certain areas that we don't have down here, so that's not one I've run across.
right. Brigida says after it rains, she puts lime on the ground. That's part of trying to change the environment, maybe, so
Yeah.
that it's not so conducive to the hatching.
I didn't see anything that talked about lime, so it may or may not be beneficial. I know it can help cut down the odor a good bit, but I haven't seen anything as it applies to coccidiosis.
All right. Oh, Laura's wanting to know, just to clarify, are we suggesting to feed medicated feed before they have a problem or just after you see the issue already?
For it to work, it needs to be fed before. I'm not advocating one thing or the other. I know some people use it, and that's fine. Some people don't want to use it, and that's fine as well.
But in terms of the medicated feed, it's such a small amount of.
It's a very low dose.
You have to do it ahead of time.
Yes.
You're going to the same
From day one.
amprolium, but in a much stronger dose once they're actually sick, right?
Right.
Okay. All right. Jason wants to know, can you still give medicated feed to adult birds if you think they have it as kind of a pre-treatment?
It's expensive. This is a starter feed, and your adult birds don't need that amount of protein and other nutritional elements in their diet. Honestly, I don't have any experience with that, and I haven't talked to anybody that did that. If they thought they had coccidiosis, the friends that I know in the fancy would treat them for coccidiosis.
Okay. All right. Wheezy wants to one more hint to our T letter horse medicine is it's a white liquid, so it's not pink or blue or purple.
Starts with a T and it's white.
Yep.
All
right.
Wheezy, I hate to tell you, honey, but I'm still drawing a big blank.
Tony says that he uses sand instead of shavings on grow out.
And hey, Tony, I love sand. I'm a big proponent of using sand as bedding. It's the best stuff since sliced bread. But if you use sand and you have coccidiosis, I would drench it with an ammonia solution. Now, I want to throw this out there. Remember, ammonia can impact your birds. They are very sensitive to it. So if you're using it in an area, make sure that you got good ventilation going on in there. Not so much even if you're drenched in the soil, but if you're spraying in nest boxes or manure areas, make sure you have good ventilation. Put a fan in there if you have to. It drives me nuts to smell it. So I know it's really affecting the chicken. So I wanted to throw that out there. But Tony, love sand. Bonus points to Tony for tonight.
All right. And Wheezy wants to apologize, but the bottle is way down at the barn and she doesn't want to miss any of our shows, so she cannot go get it. So.
Wheezy, that's perfectly fine. Let us know in 2 weeks when we're back on air.
Put it in the Facebook group.
Put it in the Facebook group. That's right. Yeah. We love you, Wheezy. You're doing good.
And Troy says that he uses bleach on his brooders when he's done with them for the season.
Bleach will not touch coccidiosis.
See? Thanks for telling us that, so we can cover that. What if there's no poop? So you're saying there's no visible poop. I'm just floored by this a little bit. So there's no visible poop on anything. You're cleaning a feeder. You see no organic matter whatsoever. And there's still, those oocysts are just hanging on for dear life.
Well, remember, let's take a water, for example. Okay. You ever seen chicks poop in the water?
A few times, yeah.
All right. You ever seen the water slop over the sides?
Yeah.
All right. So you got a potentially infected water dripping down the sides of the water.
No.
Oocysts can live up to a year. Warm, humid environments. Waters are certainly humid. That's why I say make sure you clean them. And honestly, I would be more concerned about waterers than feeders because I hang my feeders up so they're not touching the ground. But a lot of folks have feeders that sit right on the ground. So they're coming in contact with oocysts if they're not careful. That's why you want to really scrub those feeders too and give them a soak in ammonia.
All right. I'm going to touch on something that Jeff said that we didn't quite get in that interview because you were trying to, but you're doing a fecal on your birds. Your birds are healthy. You're doing a fecal. You see one egg in their poop. Like, this isn't something we panic about, right?
No. It's when you start to have some bunches. I don't know the magic number. I don't know whether it's 10 or 20 or 100.
Right.
But if you're seeing a lot of these oocysts moving around in there, it's time to get responsive on it.
And we were talking about symptoms a little bit, and just like I forgot who it was, Marie, who said that she only had one pen come down with this year, and I had one pen come down with it in my grow outs, and I actually never saw bloody diarrhea. So it might be a hint as to what kind it was. But wait, the first thing I noticed was they just weren't gaining weight.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like I'm doing my weigh-ins for the weigh-in thing, and I'm like, that first week, I was like, wow, you guys just didn't gain any weight this week. And then next week, they'd lost. And then we started
So
seeing
see,
real
all
problems.
that
Yep.
fussing and grumbling you were doing about weighing your birds and the time you're investing in that
Yeah.
paid off.
Yeah. But
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to pick
no,
on you.
you're right. But like you said, now I'm always having to go into that pen last. And you know what I mean? Like, so even though those birds are all fine and it's all over theoretically, I feel like, until I get birds out of there and really treat the area, that's always got to be my last place I do. And then take off my stupid shoes.
See, that's just
But I've been disinfecting with
biosecurity.
something that doesn't work though. Because I've been using, the normal disinfectants like foot wash, and I haven't been putting yeah.
Everybody would, and if I hadn't known about the ammonia, I would, I'd have poured some oxine in there, some bleach or whatever I had handy, and just go on about it and never think about it.
Oh, we got an excellent question. I'm glad we stalled there because I got a. So Sarah missed the first bit, but we didn't talk about this, Sarah. So you're good. You brought it to everybody's attention. She lives in Canada and gets temps -25 to -30 Celsius in winter. Can they survive those temps in the soil or on things? Or
Sarah, I'm assuming when you're dealing with those low, I cannot imagine how you deal with those temperatures. I live in Florida and I freeze at about 65. So, but bless your heart. Bless your heart. You're doing good. I'm assuming that you also have your birds in a coop, in an enclosed coop over the winter. And that's how and where your oocyst can remain and become active when it warms up again. They are tough little boogers to deal with. And I'm sorry you missed the first part.
I wonder where she can find it. Yeah. All right. So Laura's doing some looking around, and she wants to know she says trimethyl. Yeah, I'm not saying that. Is an anti-protozoal agent for treatment of EPM in horses. So perhaps if that's white, it might be what Wheezy's talking about. But we also have another guess of toltrazuril from Valerie. So just throwing those two out there for people. Jason, which types of coccidiosis tend to affect them between 6 and 9 weeks?
Usually those in the first group we talked about. And I don't know if Karen can go back and throw that.
Oh, sure.
Slide up. The Acerulina and the Maxima, I think are the ones that affect the young birds more. And I could be wrong on that. That's just from what I've heard the folks down here in Florida talking about from the university. I hear those two mentioned more than I do the Brunetti and Necatrix and the Tonella.
All right. Good, because they're easier to survive. So
yes.
Oops. Here comes Wheezy. She's got the official. So that's what the tea is called. It's not a prescription. So
Wheezy, bless your heart. I knew you came through in a pinch.
Official word.
If y'all ever have the chance to meet a true Southern lady from Mississippi and you run into Wheezy at a show, you're in for a treat. She is.
Rip, you should get Wheezy on this show. Well, maybe she doesn't have the mouth. She have a little too much cussing going on. Is that what you're trying to indicate? No, I'm teasing.
No, she's a dear friend of mine. I've known her for several years, and we always have fun when we're able to get together at the show.
All right. Well, I think we can call that a night if you want.
Oh, that's it?
Well, I mean,
so good. Folks, we really appreciate all your comments tonight, and I hope you've enjoyed the show, and I hope the banner wasn't too much for you. Virgo Farms, we love you too. I follow you on Facebook, and you put up some great posts, and I love it. So until next time, we're going to say bye. We're going to say have fun with your birds, and we're going to say thank you.